Hello everyone, today we're working on a 2005 Ford F-150 and we've got a leak on an axle seal, rear axle seal. So we're going to go through the procedure of removing that. We're going to do both seals because we have to pull out the differential fluid anyway, and both seals have the same amount of run time on them. We're going to do them both at the same time. So we'll get started with that and be back with you. Okay, we got the back of the truck jacked up on jack stands. You can see the oil that's leaked out from the seal. First, it comes down here on the cover for the brake, disc brakes, and then it leaks bad enough it comes out and sprays all over that wheel. The other side, it's not showing a leak yet, but we're going to go ahead and do it just because we've got to take everything apart anyway. We're here, we might as well do it. So, give you some idea what that axle seal leak looks like. And another thing that we're going to do before we get started is around this differential cover, we've got to take that off. A lot of dirt, a lot of crap that sits right up here on top. Okay, and what I do is take a wire brush around there before I ever take any bolts loose. And I get all that dirt knocked loose, and then I take a blowgun, an air blowgun, and blow all that stuff off, because as soon as you take that cover loose, the very first place that dirt's going to fall is right inside on the gears inside, and you got to fight trying to get it out. So I try to keep that mess from getting inside the differential. Just makes a lot less work later, and also helps make that differential last longer. So we're going to start by pulling the wheels. We're going to drain out this differential. It does not have a drain plug, so we got to take that cover off to drain it out. So we're going to get started with that. We'll be back with you. Once the tires are off, we want to take off the caliper and get that out of the way so we can pull off the rotor. Once we have the rotor off, we're going to go to the inside and pull out the pin so we can pull those axle shafts out to gain access to those seals. So basically just take off the brake caliper, 2 bolts. Okay, that caliper wants to stick on there a little bit, so what you can do is we need to force that piston back into the bore a little bit to give us some free play to get that caliper off. So grab yourself a screwdriver or pry bar here, and you can pull outward on it, and that'll force the fluid back to the master cylinder and push that piston in so that we can get some free play to get that up and out of there. Because it's stubborn. There it comes. Okay. And everything's coated with the oil too. We got to get everything cleaned up to get put back together. And then the caliper, or I'm sorry, the rotor, we're going to have to smack that probably with a hammer to knock it loose. Okay, this side here is a testament as to how hard these can come off if there's a lot of road salt in the area where you live. I would, before you do the job, make sure you have a set of rotors on hand, because if you have to use a puller to get these off, you're going to warp those rotors. And this one here, you've seen how hard it come off. Some of them will slip right off. Just depends on how much road salt they've seen, or if somebody's put any kind of coating on to prevent the rust. But this one here is pretty extreme. I mean, you got to have a pretty good sized puller to yank them off, but sometimes that's the only way to get them. So we got this side here loose and popped it loose. Now it's off. And you can see the mess that the oil has made. We're going to put on a new set of brakes here while we're here. But we're going to go to the other side as well and see how that comes apart. Okay, now we're going to see how this one comes off. Didn't have to use the puller, but some of them will come off easy, some of them come off hard. Just depends on how much rust they have built up. So, okay, we're going to spray out the housing. There's usually a lot of oxidation on the parts, the black stuff, and I usually just use some spray clean to do that. And as I do that, you can kind of see that black stuff come off. Just helps get that oxidated oil, that old stuff out of the housing. Okay, there's a bolt right here. It's got a 5/16 head on it. That bolt comes in, the threads are right here in the housing, and then there's just a non-threaded part that goes through this pin that holds your spider gears in. Now we got to pull that pin out far enough that we can push the axles in, and there's a couple little C-clips, one on each side on each axle, and that's what holds the axle from coming out as you're driving. Okay, so we've got to get this pin out. And usually there's some Loctite on that pin, just a little bit to keep it from coming loose. And we'll go back together, we'll put a little bit on there. And sometimes you get a situation like that where the pin's broke, so you have to get a new pin. Because right now it's stuck inside there. So that's just one of those things that happen. Those pins can get broken. Because there's supposed to be a piece on there probably about this much longer yet that holds that pin in. You can see it broken off right there. So we're going to have to get the other piece of that pin out before we can get that shaft to slide out. Okay, this is an unexpected event here. Like I say, we had this break, and if we're lucky enough we can rotate that out. Just get on it and maybe rotate the threads out. Just depends on how much it wants to fight us. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we can just kind of spin the rest of that out and get it. And this one wants to move, but it kind of goes and then locks up. Come on. Come on. There she's coming. There she comes. Okay. Alright. So, right there's the rest of the pin. And for some reason that thing, I don't know if it got over tightened at the factory or what, but you can see what happened there. But that's what holds that all in. So we're going to have to get a new bolt for that. And what we'll do now is come on the back side and push that pin out just far enough. I'm just going to let it kind of hang right there with the spider gear. And then we come out to the axle. Push in on the axle now that we got that pin out of the way. And there's a C-clip. It should fall out. And right there's one of the C-clips. Okay. And then we do the same on the other side. Push it in. And that should bring it in far enough. And right up inside on the end of that axle is a groove, and we pull out that little C-clip. Get it rotated in the right spot. And right there it is. Okay, before you pull this axle out, there's going to be a lot of dirt and crap right up here on top. And now's a good time to get that off before you start pulling that axle out, because when you pull the axle out, some of that dirt might fall into where the bearing's at. And I use a wire brush, knock as much of that out as you can. You might want to throw a mask on because some of that's going to be brake dust. And then I hit a little bit with the blow gun. Pull it out just a little bit. Get as much of that dirt out before that axle comes out of that seal. Alright, saves a lot of that mess falling in. Now we can go ahead and pull that axle shaft out because we got those C-clips off. And as I pull it out, I'm going to wipe it off with a clean rag. Okay. And this shows the little groove where that C-clip goes in and holds it in. So, now we've got to pull the other side out, and then we'll yank those axle seals out. Okay, I'm going to use a pry bar to take that axle seal out. Go in. You don't want to get out and scratch this bore here and make a groove for the oil to leak out. So you just go in far enough to get a hold of that seal. And obviously I got a pretty good sized pry bar. It's not going to take a whole lot. Just pop that out. There it goes. Okay. Like I say, the biggest thing is don't get in here and scratch that where that seal goes. You'll create a leak. So that basically kind of shows you how to get that seal out. Alright, when you get these axle shafts out, this spot right here is where the axle rides, the bearings here are riding on that axle. Okay, these are just a cylindrical roller bearing. Okay, now if you see any flaking in there, and what I mean by flaking is if you look at this bearing right here, you can see how the metal's flaking out. Or if you see any the rollers that have flaking on that look similar to this, these here roller bearings, then you need to be replacing those bearings. These here look good. The seal area's got just some real light grooving in, nothing that's going to stop us from sealing up on a new seal. But that's something you want to check over on both axles and check to make sure that you don't have any flaking, because if it's flaked, the axle's flaked, they make bearing kits that have the seal incorporated with it and it moves it to a different spot on the axle, or you have to replace the axle and bearing. So just a heads up on that, and that's what the flaking looks like if you're wanting to know. Where if you see that, you need to replace it, otherwise it's gonna cause you troubles. And this bearing in here, it's a pressed in bearing. You have to use some type of a puller to pull it out, and then you knock the new one in. But I just want to give you a heads up on that if you see any flaking. Okay, I'm going to put a cap plug in here, keep any of that debris or any of these wires from flying in that axle. I want to clean up that bore where that seal goes, so it's nice and smooth when that seal goes in, so it seals properly. It's a press fit, but if you got grooves or you got stuff here that's too rough, it's gonna create a point on that seal where you scratch it, and it can create a leak. So we're gonna go around there and just hit it with a wire wheel. thing I mentioned to you before about somebody prying out a seal, somebody did it on this one. This seal's obviously been replaced. This is on the opposite side where I pulled mine out. My side's nice and smooth there. Somebody had either a screwdriver or something in there, and you can see right there they grooved it. So I'm going to have to try and smooth that up as much as I can so we don't damage a new seal going in, because it's got kind of a burr on it. That just gives you some idea that if it's taken out improperly, it's going to damage it. So you can kind of see that right there. Alright, we're getting ready to put this seal in, and there's a few things that I do before I put this in. Number one, we got this groove that somebody has put in this bore, and that groove is going to be right through this Viton part of this seal where we drive it in. So in this particular situation, I'm going to use the same sealant as I do on the rear differential cover. I'm going to put a coat of it up here around this, just beyond the coating on that seal, and hopefully that's going to help us to overcome anything with the leak that gets by there on that scratch. And it's about the only thing we can do without replacing the axle. So we're going to put this around the outside here, and then the other thing that I try to do is there's a spring that keeps a load on that seal against the shaft to seal it. And when you're driving that seal in, that spring can come off pretty easy. Okay, and if it comes off, you got to get it back on. But what I try to do to prevent that is I'll use some grease. I'll just take a tube of grease, and the grease will help soak up the load and keep that spring in place. And the 90 weight will dissolve that grease eventually, so it's not an issue as far as being in the differential. And I also put some between the lips of the seal, but I'll pack that full right through there, and that kind of acts like a shock absorber for that spring so that it doesn't fly off on you and you don't realize it. Keeps it from bouncing around and bouncing off the lip of that seal. So just basically fill up between the lips with that grease. Like I say, it's not going to hurt anything in that gear oil. The gear oil will dissolve it eventually. But what that does, it gives you a nice cushion in there so that spring can't be bouncing around and come off of that lip. And then also put a little bit between the lips as well, just to lubricate that seal where it rides on the shaft. It's not going to take a whole lot, but any excess will push its way out of that seal, but just so you got some good lubrication there. And then when I go to drive it in, what I'm doing is, this is my driver. It fits real nicely right there in that low spot. If you don't have a driver, you can also drive here with a hammer, but you got to do it evenly and take that seal in nice and true all the way. You don't want to dent this, because you ripple this, you're going to create a ripple effect in here, and it's going to cause a leak. So we're going to put a little bit of that sealant on. We're going to go ahead and put the seal in. Like I say, I usually don't use any kind of sealant, but somebody before me has scratched that bore, so I got to do something to make sure that this thing don't leak. We've already cleaned up the inside of that bore, so now we can go in with the seal. There we go. Take it in until it bottoms out. And I'm going to wipe off this excess silicone here. The other seal bore feels good, so I don't need any. I'm not going to need any sealant on that, but it gives you some idea how that goes in. Okay, here's a shot of where the little C-clips have to go in. You can see the end of the shaft kind of right there at the end of my finger. There's two of them. You see the splines, and right to the inside there, right there, it's a groove where the C-clips go in. Kind of gives you some idea what that looks like. Okay, we're getting ready to put these C-clips in, and if you got it open at the top, you should be able to reach in and slip it right into the groove. There that one goes. And then once you get that clip in, you pull outward on that axle, and that seats it on the side gear so that C-clip can't fall out. Let me get this other one in here. There it goes. Okay. And we'll push that axle out there too. There. Now both axles are out. Now we're ready to put this shaft back in. Just slide it straight in. And we've got the new bolt. The new bolt's got Loctite on it already, so it's all ready to go. We're going to install that, and we're going to torque that down to about 20 to 25 foot-pounds. Alright, now that's done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to clean the outside of this housing here. We're going to get all the rust and stuff off because we're going to use a synthetic driveline resistant silicone sealant. We're going to make sure this inside's clean as well. But what I do is take a couple of these rags, cover up the housing, tuck it in. Then I use a die grinder with a 3M wheel on it to clean up that whole area, and that just helps keep some of that dirt load and crap that you're knocking off from getting on the gears. Now we're done with that, we'll clean it up. Take some brake clean or ether on a rag and clean that up nice and clean and dry. And we got the housing already cleaned up, the cover housing for the housing there, and we'll put some silicone on and we'll get ready to put that together. Okay, this gasket housing here, we're going to clean that up. Just using some ether on a nice clean rag. Go around it and make sure it's all free from grease and dirt so that sealant can adhere good. And then I'm using the Loctite ready gasket. That's what I happen to use. You can also use the right stuff. It's powertrain fluid resistant. And that's the thing you want to look at because we're putting synthetic in this. It's got to be resistant to it. I put a nice coat on, probably about a 1/16 of an inch or just a little over 1/16 of an inch, even all the way across. And I just want a little bit of squeeze out all the way around. That proves to me that it's sealed up. And put the bolts in here. Bolts are about 25 pounds. Okay, we've let that silicone sealant set up on that cover, and this is where the fill point is for that differential. Right here's your drive shaft. Take out that plug. It's a 3/8 inch square, so you just take your ratchet and get that out. The magnet's going to have some junk on it. Get that cleaned up before you put it all back together. And when you fill it, you're going to want to fill it till it starts just coming out of that bottom of that hole. And then put your plug in. We're going to be using AMSOIL Severe Gear 75W90. It's a chemically engineered synthetic. You won't find a better lubricant to extend the life of that differential. So check that out at donsoil.com. Okay, we have to put the brake pads and rotors on yet and button things up, but we're pretty well done with that differential. Gives you some idea some of the issues you can run into. Doesn't always happen, but on this particular one we had a couple issues there. That brake rotor didn't want to come off and that broken bolt. But we worked through it and got it done. And I want to thank you for watching this video and have a great day. Thank you for watching my video. Be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe to my channel at youtube.com/c/Donsoil. I'd like to introduce you to Amsoil Synthetic Lubricants. We have the most complete line of synthetic lubricants on the market that offer you greatly reduced wear, extended drain intervals, longer equipment life. You can check that out at my website, donsoil.com. I also have a website for looking up fluid capacity. It's fluidcapacity.com. You can go there and print off the capacity of your engine oil, cooling system, transmission, transfer case, differentials. Be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Don Synthetic Lubes. Thank you and have a great day.